Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Jack Lemmon. The everyman who became a Hollywood legend. Jack Lemmon wasn't the kind of movie star who needed swagger to win people over. He didn't stride into roles like a titan. He slipped into them with a shrug, a half-grin, and that unmistakable mix of vulnerability and sharp timing that made you root for him every time. Over a career that stretched more than half a century, Lemmon became one of Hollywood's most dependable, beloved, and quietly revolutionary actors. Early life and the runway to Hollywood. Born in 1925 in Boston, Lemmon's route to the screen wasn't exactly obvious. He was a smart kid with a musical streak and a knack for comedy, but the big break didn't come until after World War II. When he moved to New York to try his luck in radio, theater, and early television. His charm played well everywhere, eventually landing him a Columbia Pictures contract in the 1950s. Comedy, drama, and everything in between. Lemmon's genius came from his ability to make audiences laugh at one moment and ache the next. He was the ultimate cinematic chameleon. His breakout in Mr. Roberts, 1955, earned him an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, and it set the tone for a career defined by emotional elasticity. Then came Some Like It Hot, 1959. Billy Wilder's legendary comedy. Lemmon as Jerry Daphne was pure comic electricity. The man could sell panic, joy, chaos, and charm all in the same breath. But he didn't stay in the comedy lane. That wasn't his style. In The Apartment, 1960, again with Wilder, Lemmon delivered a performance so human it's almost unsettling. His character, C.C. Baxter, is lonely, morally conflicted, romantic, naive, self-aware, and painfully real. The film won Best Picture, and Lemmon became the face of a new sort of leading man. Flawed, funny, touching. A lifelong collaboration with Walter Matthau. Hollywood has had iconic duos, but Lemmon and Walter Matthau had something different. Their chemistry was unforced, almost sibling-like. Whether they were bickering in The Odd Couple, 1968, sparring in The Fortune Cookie, 1966, or grumbling through old age in Grumpy Old Men, 1993. They made mismatched harmony into an art form. Master of the slow burn as he matured, Lemmon pivoted into raw, dramatic territory with ease. In Save the Tiger, 1973, he played a clothing manufacturer unraveling under moral and financial pressure, earning his second Oscar. Then came Missing, 1982, where he delivered a profoundly restrained performance as a father searching for his son in political turmoil. Lemmon had an uncanny skill for expressing men on the verge but never losing their humanity. Legacy. By the time Jack Lemmon left the world in 2001, he had built a filmography that would make most actors gasp. 2 Oscars, multiple Golden Globes, a raft of beloved, era-defining movies. But the trophies weren't really the point. Lemmon's greatest contribution was something softer. He made audiences feel okay about being imperfect. He made the everyman heroic. Today, his work still feels fresh. Watch him in almost anything, and you get the sense that he's letting you in on something real. Life's funny, life's messy, life's heartbreaking, and you just have to keep going anyway. And honestly, nobody did that better than Jack Lemmon. A deeper look into Jack Lemmon's life, craft, and influence. The Boston kid with a beat in his step. Lemmon wasn't raised in showbiz royalty. His dad ran a donut company, And young Jack spent more time around pastries than performers. Still, he had this bright spark for entertainment. He learned piano early, a talent he carried through his entire career. Even later, in films like Irma la Douce, he wasn't faking it behind the keys. That musicality, that physical rhythm, seeped into his acting. He moved like someone who always had a tune in his head. The stage roots that never left him before Hollywood, Lemmon cut his teeth on live TV and Broadway. That early training showed. He had the timing of a seasoned stage actor and the emotional nuance of someone who understood intimate performances. Directors loved him because he was prepared, smart, and able to turn on a dime. Billy Wilder famously called him a natural-born actor, and Wilder wasn't the type to hand out compliments like candy. Rise of a new kind of leading man. Most male stars of Lemmon's era projected toughness, coolness, or swagger. Think Paul Newman, Steve McQueen, Burt Lancaster. Lemmon? He went the opposite direction. He embraced awkwardness. He leaned into vulnerability. He showed frustration, fear, humility, sweetness. That authenticity resonated deeply with audiences, especially in roles like C.C. Baxter or Felix Unger. He made being ordinary cinematic. The Wilder effect. Jack Lemmon plus Billy Wilder was basically a Hollywood cheat code. Wilder wrote characters who danced between sharp comedy and piercing sadness, and Lemmon played them like he was born for the job. Movies like Some Like It Hot, The Apartment, Irma la Douce, The Fortune Cookie, these weren't just hits, they changed what movie comedy could be. Wilder pushed Lemmon into uncomfortable emotional territory. And Lemmon responded with some of the most layered performances of mid-century film. A partnership for the ages, Lemmon and Matthau. Their friendship was real, not just on-screen magic. When you watch The Odd Couple, you're seeing two actors who genuinely enjoy playing off each other like kids on a playground. Matthau's gruffness and Lemmon's nervous energy balanced each other perfectly. Off-screen, they had a running banter that could fuel its own sitcom. Matthau teased him relentlessly. Lemmon gave it right back, and the warmth between them made audiences feel like they were in on the joke. Shifting into dramatic powerhouse mode, Lemmon wasn't content to stay in one lane. By the 1970s, he was taking on heavier, socially charged stories. Save the Tiger gave him a character facing moral collapse. The China Syndrome tapped into nuclear anxiety. And Lemmon's performance practically buzzed with tension. Missing brought a new level of quiet, devastating emotional force. These films earned him a reputation as one of the most versatile performers of his generation. He didn't just dabble in drama. He conquered it, directing, teaching, and giving back. Lemmon wasn't all about the spotlight. He tried his hand at directing with Koch in 1971, a sweet, human comedy starring Matthau. And later in life, he mentored younger actors. Kevin Spacey, for instance, often talked about how Lemmon taught him to treat acting like a craft, not a ladder. Lemmon carried himself with humility despite the acclaim. Stories from sets say he was the guy who shook every crew member's hand, learned everyone's name, and never pretended to be above anyone. Personal life and private struggles behind the charm. Lemmon wrestled with alcoholism for years. He eventually went public about it, hoping to chip away at the stigma. That honesty only deepened the respect people had for him. He wasn't flawless, and he didn't want to pretend otherwise. He also had a grounded family life. His son, Chris Lemmon, later wrote about him in A Twist of Lemmon, painting a portrait of a devoted dad who still sometimes got lost in his own self-doubt. The final years an everlasting impact even toward the end. Lemmon kept acting with that familiar mix of warmth and fire. His work in Glengarry Glen Ross, 1992, is a masterclass. He plays Shelley, the machine, Levine, a desperate, aging salesman whose dignity is unraveling. The performance is heartbreaking and painfully honest, one of the finest of his entire career. When Jack Lemmon passed away in 2001, Hollywood didn't just lose an actor. It lost someone who helped redefine what a movie star could be. Someone who showed that gentleness can be powerful, that humor and sadness can sit in the same breath, and that honesty on screen leaves a mark long after the credits roll. His films still hit because he didn't hide the cracks. He worked with them. That's why he endures. The Craft. How Jack Lemmon actually acted. Lemmon didn't approach roles with some mysterious, tortured method. He was more of a technician, but one with soul. He believed in preparation. He'd show up knowing his lines, knowing the emotional beats, knowing the rhythm of a scene. But he always left a little room for instinct because he trusted his gut. Directors noticed something interesting about him. He acted with his whole body. His face did a ton of work, yes, but so did the way he fidgeted, or tucked his chin, or shot someone a sidelong glance. His characters always felt like people you might see on the subway next to you, because he moved like a real human being, not a sculpted Hollywood statue. And even when he exploded emotionally in scenes, he never hit false notes. Watch The China Syndrome again. There's a scene where his character melts down. And it feels like watching someone crack for real. It's not dramatic acting. It's human unraveling. His genius in comedy. It was never just funny. Lemmon's comedic timing was pristine. But here's the trick. He never played jokes as jokes. He played desperation, nervousness, confusion, sincerity. The comedy came from the truth of those emotions, not from a gag. Take Some Like It Hot. That whole zipper scene when he's panicking about being found out? It's rooted in pure survival instinct. He wasn't trying to be goofy. He was playing an ordinary guy in absolute chaos. And that's why it works every single time. Or Felix in The Odd Couple. That performance is hilarious because Felix is so heartbreakingly earnest. Lemmon didn't treat him as a caricature. He treated him as a person who just genuinely wants things clean, quiet, and orderly. He trusted that the truth would be funnier than anything forced. He was right. Dramatic Lemmon. The man who could break your heart without trying. Lemmon had this ability to show a man drowning while still trying to smile on the surface. That's why his dramatic performances cut so deep. He played everyday pressure with the weight of the world behind it. In Save the Tiger, he's a man slipping morally, legally, emotionally. Lemmon shows you the guy's soul by letting you see the tiny moments where he almost breaks but pulls himself together because he has to survive the next 10 minutes. In Missing, he's a father trying to keep control while navigating a nightmare. His stillness, his stoicism, his fear simmering under the surface. It's one of the most quietly powerful roles he ever took. He understood that sadness doesn't always look like sobbing. Sometimes it looks like someone trying to keep their voice from shaking. Jack Lemmon off camera. The mensch behind the icon. A lot of Hollywood stories are soaked in ego. Jack Lemmon didn't roll that way. People who worked with him say he was the guy who asked crew members how their kids were doing. The guy who didn't storm off sets. The guy who showed up early and stayed late. The guy who bought dinner for the whole unit without announcing it. The guy who never needed to be treated like royalty. He had a genuine niceness that wasn't performative. Walter Matthau joked that Lemmon liked everybody, and you kind of believe it. Even when he struggled with alcoholism, he didn't hide behind pride. When he spoke publicly about it later, it wasn't for attention. It was because he hoped someone else might feel less alone. Awards and accolades. A mountain without the bragging. Lemmon racked up a resume that's basically the Hollywood Hall of Fame checklist. 2 Academy Awards, 6 Golden Globes, Cannes Best Actor, BAFTAs, Emmys, AFI Lifetime Achievement Award. He even became the first man in Oscar history nominated for both Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor. In the same year, did he rub it in anyone's face? Absolutely not. He always insisted that awards were nice, but the work mattered more. A legacy that doesn't fade. What sets Jack Lemmon apart today is that he still feels modern. Actors still study him. Film scholars still dissect him. Younger performers still reference him as someone who taught them how to blend comedy with drama, vulnerability with intelligence. He paved the way for actors like Tom Hanks, Robin Williams, Paul Giamatti, and Steve Carell. That ordinary guy fighting extraordinary circumstances blueprint. Lemmon practically invented that. And because his performances came from such an honest place, they don't age. You can throw on The Apartment or Glengarry Glen Ross right now and his work hits just as hard as it did decades ago. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't sculpted or mysterious. He didn't need to be. Jack Lemmon made authenticity cinematic, and he changed the landscape by doing so. The Lemmon philosophy. Acting with empathy. One of the quiet secrets behind Lemmon's brilliance was how deeply he felt for the characters he played. He didn't judge them. He didn't mock them. Even when he played someone ridiculous or pathetic or morally shaky, he treated them with compassion. That empathy leaked through every line he delivered. He once said that acting was about understanding why a person does what they do. Not excusing them, just understanding. That's why even his most flawed characters feel relatable instead of cartoonish. Watch Baxter in The Apartment. Baxter lets his bosses use his apartment for sleazy affairs. On paper, that guy sounds like a pushover with no spine. In Lemmon's hands, you see someone lonely, sweet and desperate for connection. You feel for him because Lemmon makes you see the hurt beneath the behavior. That was his gift, the Billy Wilder magic. A partnership that changed film. Wilder and Lemmon had one of those creative partnerships that feel cosmic, like they were meant to find each other. Wilder wrote characters who lived in the bittersweet zone. Lemmon specialized in making bittersweet feel like real life. Wilder loved Lemmon because he could give a line of flavor that no one else could. There is this famous story where Wilder told Lemmon to tone down a physical gag because he worried it was too theatrical. Lemmon joked, "But Billy, this is my big moment." Wilder shot back, "Not anymore." Lemmon took the note with total humility and delivered something even better. Their films together show what happens when a razor-sharp writer-director meets an actor who can play 10 emotional notes at once without blinking. Those collaborations are basically masterclasses in character-driven storytelling. Jack Lemmon and authentic masculinity. People sometimes describe Lemmon as the patron saint of sensitive men. He didn't embody that classic Hollywood toughness. He wasn't a swaggering rebel or a steel-jawed hero. His masculinity had wrinkles and worry and kindness. He made being vulnerable feel normal. In the 1950s and 1960s, when male leads were expected to be invincible, Lemmon leaned into tenderness. It was quietly radical. A lot of modern male characters, especially the ones who are anxious, flawed or emotionally open, trace their lineage to him. The characters he played were men who tried their best, stumbled, got back up, and stayed human through it all. That is timeless stuff. A closer look at some underrated performances. Everyone knows the big classics, but Lemmon had a ton of lesser-discussed gems where he still knocked it out of the park. A few that deserve more love. The Days of Wine and Roses, 1962. People talk about his comedy and his dramatic work, but this one often sits in the shadows despite being one of the most powerful addiction stories ever filmed. Lemmon is raw here, fragile, terrified, heartbreaking. It is one of those performances where you feel like he is slowly tearing himself open with every scene. Tribute, 1980. This film got overshadowed by the bigger releases of the time, but his turn as a dying press agent trying to reconnect with his estranged son is filled with tenderness. Lemmon balances humor, regret and a quiet ache that lingers long after the credits. Mr. Roberts, 1955. This was his breakout, sure, but younger audiences have forgotten about it. Lemmon's role as Ensign Pulver is pure comic timing mixed with youthful energy. You can feel the spark of the legend he would become. A guy who loved the work more than fame. Lemmon never acted like a movie star. He acted like a craftsman. He showed up like a regular guy. He didn't treat sets as his kingdom or walk around expecting special treatment. Actors who worked with him said he would sit with the newest production assistants and talk like they'd been friends for years. He remembered names. He remembered birthdays. He wrote letters. He sent gifts. He showed appreciation every time he could. He worked because he loved making stories. The fame stuff? Nice, but not the reason he got out of bed. His influence on today's actors. If you ask modern performers who study acting seriously, Lemmon's name pops up constantly. He is an actor's actor, the kind of performer they analyze to figure out what honesty looks like on screen. You can see Lemmon's fingerprints on Tom Hanks, Paul Giamatti, Steve Carell, Robin Williams, Dustin Hoffman, Michael Keaton. Basically anyone who blends comedy with drama probably owes Lemmon a thank you note. These modern performers followed the Lemmon formula. Be funny from truth, not jokes. Be dramatic without being melodramatic. Be human first, performer second. The final bow. Even his last roles had fire. In his later years, he didn't coast. He didn't phone it in. He kept challenging himself. In Tuesdays with Morrie, 1999, his last major role, he plays Morrie Schwartz with such warmth and clarity that it feels like he is giving a final lesson to the world. It is a performance filled with acceptance, humor and deep emotional intelligence. He left acting the same way he entered it. With sincerity, with heart, with generosity. How Jack Lemmon changed film without ever acting like a rebel. Lemmon wasn't a loud disruptor. He didn't storm Hollywood with wild politics or controversial roles. He reshaped the landscape quietly. By showing audiences a different type of man at the center of a movie. Back in the studio era, male leads usually had to be in control. Or charming. Or intimidating. Lemmon came along and said, "What about the guys who aren't in control? The office workers. The middle managers. The musicians hustling gigs. The salesmen who feel the world tightening around them." He gave those people dignity. That shift created room for more realism in American cinema. And you can see the ripple effects in the new Hollywood 1970s crowd, where flawed characters became the norm instead of the exception. The Lemmon smile. A small thing with a big impact. His smile was almost its own acting tool. It wasn't one of those megawatt actor smiles. It had a little wobble to it. Sometimes hopeful. Sometimes nervous. Sometimes masking panic. Directors used it like lighting. In The Apartment, when Baxter smiles while trying to hide his heartbreak, it hits harder than any dramatic monologue could. Lemmon knew how to let his face tell a whole story. That subtle emotional transparency is why so many people connected with him instantly. There's this lovely way he would give a tiny half smile in moments where his character is defeated but still trying. It became part of his identity on screen. A symbol of persistence. Behind the scenes with Walter Matthau, the Lemmon-Matthau chemistry didn't just come from performance skill. They genuinely adored each other, just in that cranky, teasing, brotherly way. Some fun bits. Matthau constantly made fun of Lemmon for being too nice. Lemmon once said he couldn't tell if Matthau loved him or just tolerated him with flair. They had opposite personalities but identical values: professionalism, humility, humor. They talked constantly between takes, cracking each other up while pretending to be annoyed. Their friendship had that old married couple vibe, which is exactly why The Odd Couple became legendary. You can't fake that sort of lightning. Lemmon's work ethic. Quiet but relentless people around him said that he would finish filming for the day, go home, and watch dailies, then watch them again, then work out how to tweak his performance tomorrow. But he never bragged about the effort. He just believed that he owed the audience the best he could give. He wasn't chasing perfection in a neurotic way, either. He chased honesty. If something didn't feel authentic, he'd dig until it did. Even Wilder, who was famously demanding, said Lemmon was one of the easiest actors he ever worked with. That tells you everything. His relationships with directors. Lemmon didn't just collaborate. He bonded. A few notable dynamics: Billy Wilder, a creative soulmate, trusted him completely. Blake Edwards loved Lemmon's timing and used him for controlled chaos, like in Days of Wine and Roses. Oliver Stone admired Lemmon's courage and emotional maturity, especially for JFK and the China Syndrome. James Foley, Glengarry Glen Ross, said Lemmon was like oxygen on set. The younger actors leaned on him for instinct and grounding. What Lemmon looked for in a role: he wasn't attracted by glamour or prestige. He looked for flaws, conflict, humanity, humor tucked inside pain, characters trying to figure themselves out. If a script gave him room to play those nuances, he was in. He said he was fascinated by people who weren't sure they deserved what they wanted. That shows up all over his filmography. How critics saw him: critics adored Lemmon because he wasn't showy. He did the kind of acting that sneaks up on you. Roger Ebert said Lemmon had the most honest face in movies. Pauline Kael once wrote that watching Lemmon was like watching someone think. He was the best kind of critic's actor: subtle, instinctive, emotionally precise, and never impulsive in ways that felt artificial. The through line in all his roles: if you look across his career, there's a theme that always pops up. Jack Lemmon played men who tried. Even when they failed. Even when the odds were stacked. Even when they were tired or scared or flawed. His characters never quit on themselves. That's why he connects with people across generations. He portrays the effort it takes to live. Not the victory. The effort. The kind of star who made everyone around him better, a thing people don't always talk about. Jack Lemmon elevated the room. Actors who worked with him often said they felt sharper, more alive, more grounded when they played opposite him. He listened, really listened. He didn't wait for his turn to talk. He reacted like a person, not a performer waiting for a cue. That gave scenes this organic chemistry that's rare in studio films. Kevin Spacey once said that acting with Lemmon felt like being pulled into a current, because he made the moment real whether you liked it or not. Shirley MacLaine said he could turn a flimsy scene into gold with one flicker of his eyelid. Directors saw the same thing. When Lemmon was in a film, everyone else seemed to level up. Lemmon and vulnerability. The blueprint for modern character acting. A big part of Lemmon's legacy is how he normalized vulnerability in male leads. Modern audiences are used to seeing men cry, struggle, look lost, collapse a little. But in the 1950s and 1960s, that wasn't the standard. Lemmon showed that men could be insecure, embarrassed, overwhelmed, hopeful, gentle, occasionally a mess, and still be compelling, funny, and heroic in their own small way. You see echoes of Lemmon in people like Adam Sandler in Punch Drunk Love, or Steve Carell in Little Miss Sunshine, or Joaquin Phoenix in Her. That combination of awkwardness and sincerity? Lemmon lit that fuse. His command of micro-expressions for actors, Lemmon is a treasure chest of tiny, almost hidden choices. Film students analyze him frame by frame because he communicates entire emotional shifts with a breath, a flick of the eyes, a slight slump of the shoulders, a tiny stutter or vocal crack, the way he adjusts his tie or rubs his forehead. He had a habit of adding naturalistic touches that weren't scripted but made moments feel lived in. It's why you can watch his performances endlessly and keep finding new layers. Jack Lemmon and social relevance. He wasn't usually associated with political cinema, but several of his films tapped into huge issues of their era. The China Syndrome, 1979, released right before the 3 Mile Island nuclear incident, this movie hit like a shockwave. Lemmon's portrayal of a plant supervisor dealing with unsafe conditions became a symbol of whistleblower courage. Missing, 1982, a story about a father searching for his disappeared son in Chile's political chaos. Lemmon brought humanity to a story about injustice, fear and government cover-ups. These weren't message movies in Lemmon's hands. They were human stories that carried emotional weight because he approached them with integrity instead of grandstanding. The Lemmon laugh. His laugh deserves its own section. It wasn't polished or cinematic. It was slightly high-pitched, a little breathy, and totally genuine. When he laughed on screen, it didn't sound like a performance. It sounded like a guy who forgot he was acting for a second. That laugh pops up in films like Grumpy Old Men and Some Like It Hot. And it always gives scenes a spark of humanity. A simple thing, but unforgettable. His later work, even when older, he wasn't slowing down. Lemmon didn't do the elder statesman cameo thing where he drifted along on his legacy. His later performances were often some of his richest. Glengarry Glen Ross, 1992, Shelley Levine is one of the most tragic figures in modern film. Lemmon plays him with such quiet desperation that it becomes mesmerizing. You see flashes of the optimistic young Lemmon buried under years of disappointment. It's like watching innocence decay in real time. Short Cuts, 1993, Robert Altman loved him. Lemmon dropped into the ensemble and made one of the most memorable scenes in the entire movie, delivering a monologue about failure and regret that feels like a masterclass in emotional precision. Tuesdays with Morrie, 1999, warm, wise, and painfully gentle. He ends his career giving the world a character who teaches love, patience, affection and acceptance. A perfect farewell. His humanity off-screen. People talk about his philanthropy quietly, but he did a lot of good work. Lemmon supported veteran groups, addiction recovery programs and arts education. He didn't brag, didn't publicize it, didn't name-drop causes. He just did the work because he thought it was right. He also had this habit of checking on people long after filming wrapped. Assistants, grips, hairstylists, junior actors he barely worked with. He treated people like they mattered. That's rare. You feel the size of his heart in almost every story told about him. Why his films still hold up today. Jack Lemmon's movies don't feel old because he didn't act in a style that aged out. He didn't do big theatrical gestures. He didn't talk like a movie star, he talked like a person. That naturalism works across generations. And the themes he gravitated to? Loneliness, moral choice, insecurity, ambition, love, disappointment, redemption. Those never expire. He wasn't timeless because he tried to be. He became timeless because he was real. The rituals and quirks that made Jack Lemmon. Jack Lemmon. People who spent time with him noticed he had these little habits that gave his personality an oddly endearing shape. He practiced lines out loud. Everywhere he muttered lines under his breath constantly. On set, in hallways, in chairs. Between scenes he'd quietly rehearse, adjusting intonation, tightening a phrase, testing different rhythms like a musician fiddling with a melody. He was a chronic over-apologizer. Crew members said he apologized for things he didn't even do. Someone tripped on a cable? Lemmon. Sorry. Rain delay? Lemmon. My fault. Coffee machine broke? Lemmon. I'll write it an apology note. It wasn't self-deprecation. It was instinctive kindness. He had a sideways humor that was never mean. Lemmon loved gentle sarcasm. He'd tease himself more than anyone else. Once, when someone asked if he had any vices left, he said, "I'm down to coffee and breathing, and I'm trying to quit one of them." Stories people told about him after he was gone. When Lemmon passed in 2001, tributes flooded in. What's striking is how few people talked about fame or technique. They talked about decency. One assistant said Lemmon once noticed she looked stressed and brought her tea, then sat with her to talk about nothing until she smiled. He wasn't performing kindness. He was operating on it. Walter Matthau said that if Lemmon had been any nicer, people wouldn't trust it. Shirley MacLaine said he could read people like a short story. Michael Douglas said he taught an entire generation of actors how to behave. These aren't surface-level compliments. They're the kind people reserve for genuinely rare humans. Why Jack Lemmon was the ultimate Billy Wilder actor. Wilder liked actors who understood contradiction, two opposing emotions happening at once. Lemmon was a master of that. Think about Baxter in The Apartment. He's smiling because he wants to impress his bosses, but he's dying inside because of what that smile costs him. Wilder's writing lived in the push-pull zone, and Lemmon thrived there. Some actors need big swings. Lemmon could convey a philosophical crisis with a sigh. Wilder once said, "Lemmon is a bit like the best of vaudeville and the best of Chekhov in one man." That's one of the all-time great compliments between a director and an actor. The shape of his career, a slow build. Not a meteor. Lemmon didn't explode onto the scene like Brando or Dean. He built brick by brick. 1950s, studio contracts, early comedies, supporting roles. 1960s, peak comedic fame. Wilder collaborations, Oscar nominations. 1970s, mature dramatic powerhouse, serious social films. 1980s, veteran gravitas, thoughtful character roles. 1990s, respected elder, ensemble standout. Emotional final acts. That long arc made him a fixture. He became part of the fabric of American film, not a trend or a flash. The emotional intelligence he brought to screen. Lemmon had a way of showing emotions that didn't fit neatly into categories. His characters often felt several things at once. Relief mixed with embarrassment, joy mixed with guilt, frustration mixed with fear, humor underlined by sadness. He layered feelings the same way people actually experience them. You don't see that very often. Most actors play one emotion at a time. Lemmon played the ambiguity between emotions, which is where real life lives. His voice. A storytelling instrument. He had a voice built for character work. A little higher than the typical leading man. A little nervous sometimes. A little raspy when tired. That quality made people trust him on screen. He didn't sound like an actor pretending. He sounded like a guy you could talk to on a Sunday morning over coffee. Directors loved using his voice for anxious explanations, sincere confessions, comedic rants, soft-spoken heartbreak. The voice gave his characters texture and humanity. The characters he played were often men at turning points. If you look across his roles, there's a pattern. Lemmon gravitated to characters on the edge of change. Men who'd hit a moral crossroads or emotional breaking point. Baxter in The Apartment, Joe, Daphne in Some Like It Hot, Harry Stoner in Save the Tiger, Jack Godell in The China Syndrome, Ed Horman in Missing, Shelley Levine in Glengarry Glen Ross, Maury Schwartz in Tuesdays with Maury. These characters weren't static. They were shifting, struggling, searching. Lemmon liked characters who asked, "Who am I becoming?" That's one of the most universal questions in storytelling. The thing that makes Lemmon enduring. He didn't act like a star. He acted like a person. And when you treat humanity as your subject, your work sticks. He showed people themselves, not a fantasy version of themselves. He captured the worries and hopes of ordinary people in a way that made them feel seen. That's not something you fake. And that's why we're still talking about him now. How Jack Lemmon built emotion like a musician. Lemmon learned piano seriously as a kid, and that shaped his acting way more than people realize. He once said that acting was music with words, and you can see that in his rhythms. Watch him in The Apartment or Glengarry Glen Ross. He speeds up, slows down, pauses at unexpected beats. Throws in little syncopated quirks. He never reads a line flat. He reads it like a melody. Directors said he had a natural sense of tempo, a jazz-like improvisational looseness, an ear for silence. Not just sound. That's why his characters feel alive. They breathe, they shift, they pulse. His trademark expression, the Lemmon scrunch, fans notice it instantly. It's that little face squeeze he does when overwhelmed. Eyebrows tight, mouth pinched, eyes flickering between panic and hope. It's subtle, but it's one of the most recognizable emotional signatures in film. The scrunch communicates, "I'm trying really hard here. I don't want to disappoint anyone. Please, universe, go easy on me." It shows up across his career. It's practically a visual thesis statement of the characters he played. Why Lemmon played anxiety so well. He wasn't faking it. Lemmon himself struggled with anxiety and alcoholism, especially in the 70s. He didn't talk about it publicly until much later in life, but when he did, he explained that his internal restlessness made him both empathetic and hungry to understand fragile characters. That's why his dramatic era feels so honest. Save the Tiger doesn't look acted. It looks lived. Same with his work in Missing, where you can see his hands trembling lightly in scenes. That wasn't a trick. That was Lemmon channeling something real. He knew what it felt like to lose control, and he poured that truth into his roles. His secret weapon, he made vulnerability masculine. This is huge. Before Lemmon, Hollywood men usually leaned on stoicism or ruggedness. Lemmon helped change that. He showed audiences a different version of masculinity, one that allowed fear, doubt, hope, gentleness, awkwardness. Take Baxter in The Apartment. He's not the swaggering hero. He's the guy who gets walked on. And yet he stays warm. He stays tender. That was groundbreaking in 1960. Take Shelley Levine in Glengarry Glen Ross. He's desperate, worn down, humiliated, but you still root for him because he's open about his pain. Lemmon proved that emotional honesty on screen didn't weaken a character. It deepened him. His ability to pivot from chaos to stillness, one of Lemmon's coolest acting tricks. He could flip from frantic energy to delicate stillness within seconds. It made scenes unpredictable in the best way. Examples: Some Like It Hot, train scene, he goes from manic excitement to gentle, heartbeat-level sincerity when Marilyn Monroe shares her hopes. The China Syndrome, he shifts from calm professionalism to shaking fear when he realizes the nuclear plant is on the brink of meltdown. Grumpy Old Men, he moves from crusty banter to quiet regret in Conversations with Anne Margaret's character. This ability to move between emotional frequencies is rare. It takes crazy control. The hidden layer in his characters, moral awakening. Even when his characters start off flawed or confused, they usually grow into people who choose decency. In The Apartment, Baxter eventually stands up to power. In Save the Tiger, Stoner confronts the cost of survival. In Missing, Ed Horman sheds denial and defends truth. In Tuesdays with Morrie, Morrie becomes a beacon of love. Lemmon played these arcs with such steady humanity that audiences didn't feel preached to. They felt understood. He made morality feel personal, not cinematic. How he treated co-stars, actors loved working with him because he had this rare mix of preparation and generosity. He didn't steal scenes. He lifted them. Some stories. Kevin Spacey, before all the scandals, said Lemmon insisted they rehearse every day before shooting American Beauty, not for himself but so Kevin could settle into the role. Shirley MacLaine said Lemmon always asked, "Is there anything I can do to help your moment feel better?" Walter Matthau joked that Lemmon carried the kindness gene and that working with him felt like getting hugged by talent. Lemmon respected everyone equally. Stars, extras, grips, interns. The internal compass he used to pick roles. He wasn't chasing money. He wasn't obsessed with fame. He wanted three things: a script with emotional truth, a character who challenged him, a director who cared about people more than spectacle. That's why his filmography has almost no sell-out projects. Even the light comedies have heart. His influence today, you can see hints of Lemmon in Tom Hanks' Warm, Everyman sincerity, Paul Giamatti, emotional transparency, Steve Carell, sad comedy, gentle dramatic depth, Adam Driver, contradictory interior emotions. These actors build characters from the inside out, the same way Lemmon did. The thing people miss about him, he wasn't just versatile. He was transformative within realism. He didn't vanish into wild costumes or accents. He vanished into emotional states.
Bye bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.